So welcome back. So we're going to continue our class on file and directories. And now we're going to start the second part, which is on permissions. So here is a list of commands you need to know to get information about the files, directories, and the permissions, and also to modify the permissions. So before going further, let's try to understand what are permissions. So when you create a file on a broad server, you want to either share this file with nobody because it's a personal file. You want to share this file only with your collaborators, for example, some GWAS datasets that you want your collaborator to have access to, but not every member of the Broad Institute that is connected to the Broad server. Or you want to either share this file with everybody. So for example, let's say you have developed a program and you want to share it with as many people as possible. Then you want to share this file to all persons connecting at the server. Okay, so now let's say you have shared a file or a program. You want that people you work with can either read and modify the file. So for example, they are able to modify a code, or you want them to be able to only read the file, for example, only read the genetic data in the file, but not to be able to modify or delete them. Or you have shared a program and you want to let the people only execute the program and not read and modify this program. So permissions is a way to define with who you gonna share the files of directories, either only you, either only your collaborators, or everybody, and then what kind of actions this collaborator can do. Is it only reading? Is it only executing? Or is it reading, modifying, and executing? So the way to have information on the permissions is through the L option of the ls function. And so when you type, for example, ls-l, this outputs you all the information you need of all the files and directories in a directory. So in this example here, I'm in my personal directory, and if I type ls-l, it's just gonna output on every line all my files and directories, and it's going to give me a lot of information on these files and directories. The first information we can see here in red is the permissions on the files and directory, and we're gonna see what those letters means in the next slide. The second information is the number of files and directories that we have in each element. So for example, if it's a file, the number of file and directories is just one. But if you have a directory, for example, here I have an ABC directory, this is going to give me the number of files and directories in the ABC directory. And here, for example, it's 3. Then you're going to see the owner of the file. So here I'm the owner of all these files and directories. Then it's going to output the group with which I'm going to share those files. And so here I've decided to share these files and directories with everybody at the Broad. Then I have here the size of each element. And then I have here the time when the file or directory has been modified the last time. So now let's try to understand what all these 10 letters here mean and what does it tell about permissions on the file or directory. So, as I said, there are 10 different letters in this block. The first one is just an indicator to say if the element is a file or a directory. So if it's a file, we're going to have an hyphen. If it's a directory, we're going to have a D. Then we're going to have a read, write, and execute information for the owner, for the group, and for the other users. Okay, so in this case here, if I have that, it means that the owner, so for example me, can read, write, and execute the file, but also everybody in the group, like all the collaborators, can read, write, and execute the file, and everybody in the server can read, write, and execute the file. So what you usually want for the files you want to share is to let your collaborators read the files, but not to modify or delete the file. So you want to remove them the access of writing the file. So now let's say you want to change the permission of a file. To do that, you need to use the chmod function. So now let's see how to specify to the chmod function how to specify the rights you want to give to the owner, the group, and the other users. So to do that, you're going to give some score for reading, writing, and executing. So specifically, you're going to give a score of 4. For reading, a score of 2. For writing, a score of 1 for executing. And for each of the type of group, either the owner, the group, and the other user, you're going to sum those scores. So for example, for the owner, you're going to give a score of 7 because you want to let the owner read, write, and execute the file. For the group, you're going to give a score of 5, and for the other users, you're going to give a score of 5. And so the corresponding command, if you want to give these permissions to a specific file, so the command you need to type to give those permissions to a specific file is chmod 755 and the name of your file. So here in this example, if I'm looking at the rights I have for the new file I've created, so to know that I need to type the ls-l new file, it outputs me that it's reading and writing for the owner, reading and writing for the group, and only reading for the other member. And so if I want to change the permissions for this file, I just need to type chmod 755 new file to give the permissions I've decided before, which is reading, writing, and executing for the owner, which is me. Reading and executing for the group, which here is Broad. And reading and executing for everybody else. Now, let's say I want to go back to the previous permission, which was only reading and writing for the owner and the group, and only reading for the others. I just need to type chmod 664 new file. So now let's say you want to change the permissions of all the files in a directory. Then what you need to do is use the command chmod with the option R. So for example here, let's say we have our new folder here, which has the right reading and writing for the owner and the group, and only reading for the other people. If we type chmod 755 new folder, it's just gonna change the permissions of the directory, but not of the files and directory inside this directory. Because if we look at what's going on inside the new folder, we can see that the file in this directory has different permissions. So the way of changing permission recursively for all files in a directory is just to type chmod -r, the 3 digits relative to the rights you want to give, the permissions you want to give, and then the name of your directory. Okay, so now let's see two commands to know in which groups you are and to change the group of some file. So the first command you need to know in which groups you are is the groups command. So if you type groups, it's gonna output all the groups you are in. So for example, me, I'm in the Broad group, as everybody in the Broad is. I'm also in the Ginger group because I'm part of the Ginger project, and everybody in the Ginger project is in the Ginger group. And here there are three different groups, which are three different groups I'm collaborating with on different projects. So now let's say I have a file, new file, which currently is shared with everyone who is in the Broad group. And I want to share this file only with people that are in the Ginger group. What I need to type is the command change group, so chgrp, the name of the group, Ginger, and the name of the file. And so after I've typed this command, what you can see is this file is shared with a different group, which is now Ginger. Okay, now let's go back to the output of the LSL function. And let's go back to the information about the size. What you can see here is for each file, its size in terms of number of bytes. But for each directory, you don't have the size of all the files in directory. You have the size of the metadata, which is the information relative to the directory, such as, for example, the list and the number of files you have in the directory. So now let's say you want to know what is the real size of your directory. And what I meant is what is the size of all the files in your directory. Then you need to use the du function, which is gonna show you space usage for files and directories. So as you can see here, if I type ls with the L option, I have only the metadata information of directories. If I type du, I have the size of all directories and subdirectories. If I want to make this information more human readable, I'm going to use the H option. And so when I type du-h, I'm going to have the size in a format which is readable. So for example, it says 3.1 megabytes or 1.5 gigabytes, which is more readable than reading all the bytes here. And finally, the most used combination of options for du is to use du with both H and S option, and then it's going to give you in a very clean way the size of all files and directories in a directory. So here another example where we want to know the size of all files and directory in the Broad Ginger directory. What we need to do is to go to the Broad Ginger directory and then type the command du with the HS option and a star. And we're going to see in another class what this star stands for. And finally, this is going to be the last command of this video. The df function will give you the system disk space usage. So for example, here, if I'm on the Broad server and I type df with the H option, it's going to give me the size, the used size, and the available size of different directories, including the Ginger directory. So for example, what you can see here is that the Ginger directory has a limit of 1 terabyte and that it has used 5.5 gigabyte of disk space out of the 1 terabyte. So this is the last slide of this video, and then we're going to move to the next video, which is renaming, moving, and copying files and directories.